Hey everybody, guess what? The Untethered podcast is back one day only until Mike and I decide to do this again. We're actually going to be talking only for an hour, maybe a little bit more than an hour, but the only thing we're going to be talking about this entire show is the next upcoming season of The Ultimate Fighter. It's really big news. Justin Gaethje, and Eddie Alvarez, they're coaching. It's a whole bunch of women. Mike, I haven't seen your pretty face in a while. Let's talk Ultimate Fighter. Do any of these women want to be a fighter?
Isn't Lauren Murphy on the show?
Yeah, dude, it's going to be the worst. Who gives a fuck? Let's talk about Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor, the only thing that actually matters in MMA. Just kidding. We're talking about Jon Jones.
Yeah, you know what, Matt? I actually found out the news last night. I was about to start subbing, teaching for a women's jiu-jitsu class last night, and my coach was just leaving, and he came up to me and was giving me instructions about what to do when the class is over. But he's like, "Oh, also, Jon Jones tested positive for steroids," and I'm like, "Wait, what?" And he's like, "Yeah, it just came out right now." And so after class, I was on Twitter and looking at stuff, and I saw that you wanted to do the show, and between now and then, I've been thinking about it, and how I feel about it. And you know what? I don't care. I just don't care. I mean, everybody knows my stance on PEDs. Everybody knows my stance on USADA. And I just, first of all, this is a, how does USADA phrase it? Jones has been notified of a potential anti-doping whatever. So there's the slight chance that the B sample comes back negative, or somewhere in the process he gets sort of like the first time gets a reduced sentence or something along those lines. But even if he does get sort of hit hard on it, like he's already had a full career. He's already proved himself to be arguably the best fighter of all time. I don't think anything changes because of this in terms of what he's already accomplished. If he loses 2 to 4 years of his prime, or this is the end of his career, that's really unfortunate. But I just don't care. I mean, I care in the sense of all the things I listed, but I don't care. Like, I'm not going to lambaste John for this. I think you can tell by the expression that I'm just sort of out of words.
So that's the Untethered podcast, everybody. No, so like I agree with you. Like it's hard. It's hard to actually care anymore, and just in general, like I'm so far removed from MMA that like it takes something stupid like this to actually get me excited, because it's so stupid, right? Like this is a guy who there's no reason for him to take PEDs. Like really, there's none.
Well, let me interject there. I mean, if you argue that all the other top guys are taking stuff,
no, I'm saying that his skill level is so far beyond everybody else's that even like his opponents taking junk doesn't even level the playing field. Like it wouldn't level the playing field just because he's that much better than everybody else. And like it's hard for me to care because like we've talked about this so many times. John, like it started years ago, and I kind of talked to you about it like before the show. John has been with the Kawa brothers, Malky and Abram Kawa, for close to 8 years, maybe a little bit more. And they've just been enabling him the entire time, right? So like it's not just the PEDs, it's not just the DUIs, it's not just the cocaine, it's not just driving his car and wrapping it around a telephone pole with 2 women that are not his wife in the back seat. It's not just getting pulled over driving at a strip club for driving under the influence. It's not just getting into a car accident in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and then running away from a scene of a crime, which is technically a felony, but he didn't actually face a felony charge. It's not just checking into rehab and then 24 hours later checking out. It's not just one thing. It's a huge amount of things, right? And he has he has this situation where he's surrounded by people that they understand that he's a meal ticket and that he's a very, very, explosive personality. He's combustible personality. So instead of saying, "Hey, John, like we need to actually get you help for," start like PEDs is one thing. Like who cares? Like everybody does them in sports. And honestly, at this point, I think everybody needs to. It's more get help for the other stuff. But they want to keep placating him and enabling him and saying like, he's a big boy. He can make up his own decision. It's like, I don't think he can at this point. I think that he hasn't been told no ever in his life. So there's like, he can't make his own decisions because he's never had a negative. He's never seen the negative. And the negative, like, cool, he still made millions of dollars for this fight. He's still going to get paid. Like the UFC, it was real nice of USADA to not announce that he tested positive for anything until after the fight and until they made tens of millions of dollars. Like, there's no negative ramifications for this except for like he's going to be on the sidelines for 2 years, maybe 3. And like, that's it. Like the negative is that he doesn't get to fight for 3 years, maybe. And the UFC is the one who's going to face like the worst of it, which is, oh shit, we have literally no marketable fighters anymore.
I mean, to be fair to USADA in this case, from what I saw reported, the sample that tested positive was the one that they collected after he weighed in. So there really would have been no chance for them to have,
right?
Given the way that the testing procedure works, that there just wasn't that time to collect it, get it tested, get it, get the results back. I'm sure there's,
but it's mostly like, we can agree that the only negative is going to be to the UFC, right? Like they're the only ones that face any sort of like negative that have any sort of like.
Well, I mean, John loses on 2. I mean, again, this is all assuming that he gets, suspended for it. He's going to face 2 or 3 years of, he's still in the prime, probably the late prime of his athletic career. So he's going to lose out on 2 or 3 years of being able to make money from that. He's going to now have to face, I believe even if this B sample ends up coming up clean, or if for some reason he's exonerated, he's still going to have questions about his legacy, because even Anderson Silva faced this with his positive test at the end of his career or towards the end of his career. There's questions now about how long he's been using. And again, you and I can go back to the fact that I'm never surprised when a professional athlete tests positive for a performance-enhancing drug, just because so many athletes are using. As long as you have the means and the money, it's not terribly difficult to beat tests. It's again, I always come back to, I don't see why we aren't trying to regulate it, why we aren't letting guys use stuff. Which in essence is medical advancements to, improve recovery time, to increase strength, to increase speed, to increase.
I mean, we can also agree that like it's one of those things where if you're not taking them, you're on the wrong end of this, right? Like everybody likes pointing to like Lance Armstrong, changing sports, but like everybody likes pointing to Lance Armstrong about like how he was blood doping for the Tour de France. It's like, so is a top 25. Like you can't complete that ride unless you're doing some sort of like real science shit and not just like, oh, hey, I have like a really nice bicycle and I train. Like you can't do that bike ride without having some sort of like an enhancer to be able to actually do it. Like baseball like still tests for steroids, but like you don't hear about negative tests as often because either the players union actually negotiated a pretty decent deal when it came to testing. And then also like baseball's not fucking stupid. Like it's not like as a league it's not stupid. Like the Major League Baseball is not dumb. They realized that in the 90s they were in a slump, and what got them out of the slump was a home run race. And like the idea that some guys are not getting in the Hall of Fame for taking steroids. It's like, get off your fucking high horse as a journalist.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Well, and going back to what you're saying about Armstrong, my jiu-jitsu coach and I were talking a couple nights ago, and I think this was before the Jones stuff came out, so this was just totally unrelated, but he was saying something about it. There was something he saw where it was the top 100-meter dash times in history, and if you scratched out all the guys who've tested positive in their career, I mean, the only guy really at the top that remains is Usain Bolt. But then it's just like, 25 of the top non-Bolt times are scratched out or something, something along those lines.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, again, this is nothing new for anyone who's heard us on Twitter or on this show or, read articles, especially on my end. I mean, this is stuff that I've been arguing now for, close to a decade, which is sort of insane to think about. Maybe this argument is why my hairline keeps receding and I keep getting this spot in the back of my head that's growing.
You're gonna be joining me soon.
I am.
One of us. No, what's gonna be like the only thing that you brought up, which I'm not a fan of legacy talk because I think legacies are stupid. But because in most cases, because again, I brought this up a lot of times, like every single time a fighter retires, people are like going, "What's his legacy?" It's like, it's fucking Nate Quarry. Like, who gives a fuck, right? Like Nate Quarry doesn't have a legacy. He doesn't like fucking Jacob Volkman doesn't have a legacy. I don't give a shit. Like, he didn't leave a lasting impact on the sport.
Well, and legacies don't mean much when the sun blows up and we all of human civilization gets sucked into a black hole.
Well, sure, yeah, dude, let's I hate legacy talk just because, like, for the most part, it doesn't matter. Like, we can be honest about it and say your legacy, unless you're like Anderson Silva has a legacy, BJ Penn has a legacy, but like a lot of fighters don't. Obviously, in the case of Jon Jones, he does have a legacy. I'm not trying to discredit that, but what'll be interesting is does he now have like the Barry Bonds effect?
I would probably. I mean, the thing with Bonds is he never tested positive. I mean, we sort of know that he took stuff, but Jones has that additional sort of hook in this case where he's got 2 positive tests now. I mean, again, the second, whatever follow-up they have to do might come back negative or he might be exonerated in some other way. But, as we look at it now, he has 2 positive tests on his record. And, I'm trying to think back now, who else has tested positive more than once? We have Josh Barnett, McKinley St. Vitor.
Josh Barnett, Vitor. I mean, not for steroids, but Nick Diaz. Like,
yeah,
Nick Diaz with constantly testing positive for marijuana metabolites. Like, but again, like, is this now the Barry Bonds effect where Jon Jones, like, if there was a real Hall of Fame and writers got to vote as opposed to just like the UFC being like, "Hey, we like you," would Jon Jones get into the Hall of Fame right now based on the way that the Baseball Hall of Fame is voted?
So I think it's interesting to ask both questions. Will he make a UFC Hall of Fame? Where
I think eventually. I think that it's hard. It's hard to deny that, right? Like,
McKinley also mentioning Sonnen and Bonner have tested positive twice. I think it's if Dana White is still somehow involved in the UFC, I could see a case where he wouldn't put Jones in for that reason. I can see Dana saying, being asked in an interview and saying, dude tested positive twice, his whole career is in question, et cetera, et cetera. Plus it doesn't sound like the Jones-White relationship has really gotten any better since UFC 151, and everything in between that. Now, in terms of like a journalist, like a Baseball Writers Association of America situation where the journalists are voting in,
an MMA Journalists Association. Let's say if that is
some hypothetical MMA Journalists Association that is totally unbiased in terms of how they let people in and seems to have their scruples in order. I actually see it's tough because I think there's a segment of the MMA media world where they have a sort of traditionalist mindset, and there's the sort of hysterics about, oh, this is combat sports, you can't dope because you're going to kill somebody. But then you have contingents like me, and I think Luke Thomas right now is the other big voice in this, where there's more of a progressive thought on PED use and the fact that this is a reality in sports in 2017. And I mean, it's a reality in sports in fucking 1950. I mean, this isn't like, it became a big deal because of baseball in the 90s, but it's not like steroids and performance enhancing drugs is something that just started out of nowhere in the last 20 years. Like, this has been something that's going on for fucking decades, if not over a century. And, I just sort of like in baseball, I think there is sort of a clash between two groups of people. And I think in baseball, it's more of a old guard, new guard thing, where in MMA, I don't think there really isn't. I guess there's sort of an old guard if you look back at like the Josh Grosses and Loretta Hunts of the world, but it's still not really the same as the establishment in baseball. I think there's just two different cultures and two different mindsets at play. And my first reaction when you asked that was that I think that he would get in, but now that I think about it, there's just such a reactionary element to the media that I think there are people who will totally they won't necessarily disregard Jones's career, but they'll bring up all the questions, quote unquote, behind it as reason to not put him in some sort of hypothetical Hall of Fame.
Right. I mean, like I think it's an interesting question because you have we are getting the double talk right now. Never mind, it went away. I think that you have a case of a very, very talented fighter where everybody knows that he's extremely talented, and up until a certain point, he was, without a doubt, the best fighter. Right? Like there was a point in his career where there was no question of he is the best. He's never tested positive for anything. Yes, he has some maturity issues, but aside from that, he is the best, and there's no question. And now it's two instances against the same fighter where he's tested positive for some sort of a performance-enhancing drug. I think that you will have the MMA journalists that will say, we want to have a clean sport. And I think that it's almost like a holier than thou take on it.
Josh Gross.
Right. Like I'm sorry. I'm a shithead. I know that. Like, I know that that's my role. Like, I'm the one on Twitter making jokes. I don't really care though. Like, I don't care that he was that he's tested positive for stuff. I think the funnier thing is, like, remember when we had the USA Today Bloody Elbow rankings, and it was after the Shogun fight, and I didn't put Jon Jones number 1, and people freaked out because, like, he was a champion, he beat the champion, and my reasoning is that he cheated, and with the eye pokes and stuff. You can also make the argument that he's been a dirty fighter his entire career. Like, there's a certain way about Jon Jones's career where you could kind of look at it and go, he hasn't been a clean fighter even when he tested clean, right? Like, between like the eye pokes and that shitty kick to the knees and like the hand, like the finger on people's throats and various other shitty things that he does, cage grabs, that kind of stuff, low blows. He hasn't been a clean fighter. It's just certain aspects of the rules inside the cage just never get brought up. I think it would be interesting. I think that it's interesting to think, if they had a vote today, would the MMA Journalists Association, which again is really funny that it exists in any sort of a capacity, would those members actually vote this man in, or would they say he's a cheater, he's a dirty fighter, and it doesn't matter what he's done?
Let's sort of diverge here from Jones for a second, and we'll get back to him later. Let's talk about Cormier and then the UFC in general. But let's start with Cormier.
Do you give him the title back?
That was sort of the first thing on my mind is assuming this test does end up resulting in a suspension. Obviously, they would strip Jones of the title. I mean, the last time I remember a situation, I guess there were two times in the past this has happened. They were with Sylvia and Barnett, right? Barnett beat Couture. I forget. Was it one of the Arlovsky fights that Sylvia won, or something along those lines? Where they tested positive and they were stripped, and then I believe they just had an interim, or not an interim fight, but a new fight for the title. Instead of just awarding it back to the guy. I assume that's kind of what they would do here. They would put Cormier back in with Gustafsson, or what's that guy, Ozdemir? Yeah. One of those guys, and just sort of put the title up for grabs. I can't imagine that would be... I just can't see them putting it back on Cormier. Again, given the past of how they've handled it as well.
So Sylvia was stripped of it after Gan McGee.
Okay. Yes.
44. Yeah, I mean, after that kind of loss, where it's like that wasn't a decision, right? Like that wasn't a split decision or any sort of a decision. That was definitive. Could you just say like the fight didn't matter? Daniel's our champion again. Like, I don't think you can give him the title right back. I think that you need to have some sort of a title eliminator or title fight. But then you also have the issue of like, your champion just gotten like knocked out, and then afterwards your camera crew is stupid enough to put a camera on him while he's like bawling his eyes out. Could you sell him as like a fighting champion again, or like a guy trying to regain his championship? I don't know. And like that, it sounds shitty to say that, but like I don't know if you can do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, just after you got done explaining why you don't like talking legacies, but how does this test do anything for you regarding Cormier's legacy? Because his only two losses now have come to Jones, and
I don't think that steroids. I don't think that steroids wins or loses you a fight. I think that steroids are they help you in training, and it might give you like a mental edge as far as like, I know I can do this, but I don't think like that they won or lost that fight. I think that Jon is just the better fighter, right? I don't think like it happens, sometimes you just have an opponent that you cannot beat. And I think that for Daniel Cormier, Jon Jones is that person. I think that the bigger issue is going to be Daniel is the best UFC light heavyweight at a certain point, when the best fighter by his own mistakes was not able to be the best fighter. Mm-hmm. Like that I think is Daniel Cormier's legacy, and it sucks that it comes with that asterisk of like, Daniel Cormier is the best fighter in the UFC light heavyweight division, but only because Jon Jones can't actually keep his shit together. That's
right.
That's not the best fighter.
And that was the common refrain when when Cormier, officially held the title while Jones was out. I think the most interesting thing about this whole situation now, because like I said at the top of the show, I don't think the Jones stuff by itself doesn't really interest me at all, just because I'm just so sick of the doping shit. But the sort of ramification on the UFC as a business is the interesting part. Ronda's gone. Conor is going to pull in some amount of money for them on Saturday.
Conor's probably gone.
But there's a chance certainly a good chance he's not fighting again this year, despite what they are claiming. And there's a decent chance he doesn't fight again. Jones was sort of the guy who. Can you hear me again?
Yep.
Okay. By his own faults and by some missteps by the UFC as a promotion, his drawing power has been clipped at the wings a little bit. But even then, it was reported that 214 did a pretty strong buy rate. So, this is a guy that you could still try to build your promotion around. But now, it looks like he's going to be gone for at least a couple years. If you take him out of the equation, you take Ronda out of the equation, you take Conor out of the equation, who is going to be able to step up and be a star and save the UFC from hitting the lows that they hit in, 2014 or 15, a couple of years ago, when they did just dismal business?
That's the question. I think that's an interesting thought, is that Ronda's completely done. I think that there's no chance that she comes back. I think that any sort of hope that she was going to return is just done. I don't think that, what was it? Travis Brown just tested positive for something too, a couple of months ago, right?
Did he?
I think so. Or
we watch MMA.
Yeah, I definitely watch MMA. I think it's just they're at a point where they don't have anything. They don't have anybody waiting in the wings, right? At least when Brock Lesnar left, you had the UFC owned Strikeforce with Ronda over there, where it's we're just waiting for a deal to be over, and then we can bring her in. When maybe George St. Pierre's return. Did test positive for being a shit.
Shouldn't we read that as shite?
Yeah, it's shite.
Considering the source.
No, at least when Lesnar left the first time, they had Ronda Rousey waiting. And I think that happened almost immediately afterwards. They had something. Maybe George St. Pierre's return, maybe, but I'm not really stoked on George St. Pierre versus Michael Bisping. I don't really care about it. I don't really care about the potential George St. Pierre Tyron Woodley fight. Tyron Woodley is he's worse than Demetrius Johnson, and Demetrius Johnson's biggest issue is that he's small. Tyron Woodley, by everything, should be a really, really good pay-per-view draw, or at least consistent 350, 375 guy. But I think now they can't sell a Tyron Woodley fight. There's no way. Even if and if I'm Nick Diaz, I'm not coming back for a Tyron Woodley fight. If I'm George St. Pierre, I have no interest in Tyron Woodley because I'm not making any money on that pay-per-view.
And you might potentially look terrible.
And I might look bad.
Even in a win, you might look bad just because of the way Tyron likes to fight now.
Right,
or can fight. I mean, there are times when he actually looks good, but
yeah. But Tyron Woodley as a champion, he doesn't get people excited because for the stars of the past to come back, Nick Diaz is not coming back to fight Tyron Woodley. I'm sorry, that's not happening. George St. Pierre, after that fight that he had to see live, there's I guarantee he told Dana, I'm not fighting him. I'm not making any money on this fucking fight. And they'll have certain hits. I'm sure they're gonna make money on McGregor Mayweather. they're gonna make a bunch of money with that, and that's how they're gonna say that we had a decent year. But they're completely fucked. For a long time. I saw somebody last night mention maybe Max Holloway, but like Max Holloway, years from being that guy.
Yeah. It's funny, when I was asking the question, I had actually totally forgotten the GSP return, and I think that says a lot about. It's not that I don't think people care necessarily about St. Pierre returning. I think there's just the way that the UFC has handled it has been completely backwards. So I actually like the fight with Bisping. I think it's a good fight for George to come back to. It's a fight that Bisping actually might win. They're two very interesting long-time UFC personalities. I think that the issue that people have is that it's for a middleweight title that you can argue St. Pierre doesn't have any right to be fighting for. And, personally, I thought Bisping lost or should have lost the Silva fight, and sort of kind of lucked into the title fight. And, he's obviously done well since then. But the fact that the UFC has been able to take what should be a pretty easy money-making opportunity with St. Pierre returning and turning it into this thing where it seems like the majority of MMA fans are actively resisting it and just don't care about it is sort of mind-blowing. And it's arguable at the same time, though, that that's probably their best sort of money-making option at this point. I was looking at if you look at the top pound-for-pound fighters, according to the UFC.com rankings, if you take Jones and McGregor out, here's your list of top pound-for-pound guys. And Matt, you stop me. Don't stop me, but I'll get through this list, and you tell me at the end who the biggest star here is.
Okay.
Demetrius Johnson, Stipe Miocic, Max Holloway, Cody Garbrandt, Daniel Cormier, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Tyron Woodley, Dominic Cruz, Michael Bisping, Jose Aldo, Chris Cyborg, Amanda Nunes, and Robert Whittaker. And I'm not talking. We can talk about potential, but who's the biggest star right now?
Right now, shit. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna relook at that because that's rough. That's rough.
I think there's an argument here that Chris Cyborg might be the biggest star. I don't know if that translates to the biggest pay-per-view star.
Yeah, but I mean, taking away Connor and taking away Jones, you have, Demetrius Johnson, no way. Stipe, not close at this point. Cyborg, Bisping, Aldo, Joanna.
Yeah, I think that's sort of the top 3 or 4 that I would look at too.
Maybe Cody Garbrandt, but he's just a garbage person.
I think you can throw Cormier on there too.
Yeah, like Cormier too, but like that's a rough that's a rough grouping right there, man. Like, but it also just goes into like the light heavyweight rankings. Daniel Cormier is, I guess, maybe champion now. Gustafsson, Ozdemir, Glover Teixeira, Jimmy Manuwa,
Shogun. Shogun is number 6 at light heavyweight.
Yeah, but like maybe he's top 5 now because if Cormier is champion again, that's crazy. Elvin St. Peru, Corey Anderson, who the fuck is that? Misha Sikrinov, no idea. Alira Latifi, it is 2017. Maybe Little Nog is top 10 light heavyweight in 2017, according to these rankings. If like Jones gets dropped, then like I'm gonna be honest. Who the fuck is Tyson Pedro? I can't even pronounce number 15 on this list.
Casimir Hadad-Tigilov.
No idea. Who is he? Who is that man? This is crazy. Holy shit. You stopped watching MMA for a year and then like some dude named Gadzimurad and a Tikov becomes a real fighter. He has 2 wins in the UFC. He has 2 wins against Marco Marcos Rogerio de Lima, no idea. And Joachim Christensen, who the what? How is he top 15? This is insane. No. This is real time. This isn't fake. No idea who he is. Also, no idea how he actually made it in the top 15 on 2 fucking fights. Man, I'm going to be honest. You have to talk to your boy from Fight Metric and just be like, I know you gave Matt Roth a hard time, but you should have just let him just destroy these rankings because this is fucking stupid. Man, but like, you could see that shit for most of these divisions. Is Evan Dunham still... Gilbert Melendez doesn't even fight in the UFC anymore.
How is he still...
He's top 15 lightweight. What? No. Yo. You have to organize a conference call between me and Rami. Me and Rami are gonna have words. Because I got shit. I got shit on for what I did. And guess what? I did the right thing.
I mean, to be fair, Melendez is fighting Jeremy Stevens at 215.
Is he?
Yeah, he is.
Oh, they did re-sign him. That's crazy. This is nuts. Who the fuck is Matthew Lopez?
I mean, going back to that top pound for pound list too. I mean, the guys and ladies we mentioned, Cormier is in his late 30s, Bisping's in his late 30s, Aldo is in his 30s and past his prime. Chris she's 32, and I mean, she still should have a few years on top, no problem. But I mean, the guys that we were talking about, there are.
Where's Chuck Liddell? Why isn't he ranked?
You could make the argument if Chuck Liddell came back, he would be the top guy in the UFC.
100%. And you could also make the argument that if Chuck Liddell came back, he's a better argument for being a top 15 light heavyweight than Gadser Murad Antigolov.
Poor Gadser Murad Antigolov.
Who the fuck is he? I want to interview him, and in the interview, just me staring at him, go, who are you? God, I'm not trying to be shitty. I'm sure he's a great person. He's funny probably and a great personality, but like, can he be funny? I don't know. Like, can those Russian dudes actually have a sense of humor? Like, maybe. I don't know. Now I'm picking fights with a country. But seriously, who the fuck are these people? And honestly, does the UFC, when Conor McGregor retires after making probably close to $100 million for fighting Floyd Mayweather, and then probably like another 80 or more, depending on the outcome of this fight, when he fights what's called Paulie Malignaggi. And then there's also like there are rumors that depending on the outcome of the fight, Conor may fight the winner of Triple G and Cotto, not Cotto, Canelo Alvarez. Like, Conor may just say like fuck it to MMA and just go for big money now.
If McGregor loses to Mayweather, there's no way you can put him against the winner of GGG and
no, but
there's just no, you can't. No one's gonna buy that.
No, but let's say he wins.
Yes, let's say that he wins.
Matt, stop it. Stop it. Fuck.
I mean, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they do the Malignaggi fight. That seems totally realistic to me.
I think they're already building to it. I think I would be very surprised if that fight does not happen. And the only reason why it doesn't happen is that Conor just gets starched in the first 4.
Right, and no one wants to, yeah.
But if Mayweather carries him to a decision, 100% that's happening. Yes, it's going to be Mayweather carrying him to a decision.
Chat in the chat saying feed Conor to Bud or Loma. But I mean, going back to the original question, I mean, what the pay-per-view business and combat sport business in general, and this goes this applies to wrestling as well. It's always been cyclical. There's always ups and downs. And, you know, I said after whatever their first big down year was that, you know, or the second down year, I remember we talked on this show, and of the three of us with Wyman, I was the only one that said that they would bounce back, and they bounced back huge, and none of us really saw that coming. But, you know, there's always a sort of regression to the mean, and they're probably going to hit a downward spot here just because there's no one available. But without sounding all doom and gloom, and you know, there's always a possibility that people break out and there's new stars. But you know, this also ties back into some of the decisions they've made in terms of not re-signing guys like Rory McDonald and Ben Henderson. And it's not that you necessarily need those guys. I mean, Rory could still be some sort of draw, and he still has the talent to be a champion. But when you sort of take out those guys, you know, it just becomes harder and harder to build stars, because you don't have. I mean, you don't have a guy like Ben Henderson to build a lightweight name off of. You know, like Justin Gaethje could go out and starch Ben Henderson, and you'd have another, you know, highlight reel fight for him that would look well on his resume. And obviously, lightweight is deep enough where there's a lot of fights for him. But you know, this applies to especially the weight classes that aren't as deep as those classes between featherweight and welterweight. I don't know. We talked about it too. I mean, it seems like the Fertittas got out at the perfect time.
They really did. Like those dudes are geniuses. Because again, they will buy back the UFC. Guaranteed, they're going to be buying the UFC back, and it's going to be at pennies on the dollar. I would be honestly surprised if the sale price back to the Fertittas is over $1 billion, because I think that they can go away from the TV and the pay-per-view model. I think they can get away from both of them. I think that it's scary though, because like TV is guaranteed, and maybe not get away from the TV model, but I think they can they can work like the WWE model, and I think that it's terrifying for them to actually take that step.
You're talking about a full-on push to the network sort of thing?
Yeah, like go full-on push to the network. Make Fight Pass instead of $9.99 a month, make it $20 a month. You get the pay-per-views for free though, and then like negotiate for your Fox Sports 1 and your Fox cards, but make pay-per-views on Fight Pass. Up the price to Fight Pass to $20. People have been proven that they're okay with spending $60, so $20 is probably not going to be a huge deal. And then like, hey, if your internet sucks and you can't support streaming, online streaming, you're still stuck with the $60 a month pay-per-view, which is what the WWE does for a lot of people. People don't pay for the $9.99 network all year round. They buy WrestleMania at the end of the year, WrestleMania, Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, and SummerSlam, and they pay $60 for it, and that's cool. I don't know. I think that the Fertittas are very, very smart. They were smart to get out. I think that WME, they're praying that this pay-per-view this weekend does 5 million buys. If it doesn't, like, they're fucked. F-U-C-K, fucked. Like,
noted financial analyst Matt Roth.
No, but like, tell me I'm wrong.
I mean,
tell me I'm wrong, though. Tell me I'm wrong.
Matt Bill Simmons Roth.
Tell me that I'm actually wrong, though. Tell me that the UFC doesn't need this pay-per-view at this point, with all the news that's going on, and they were expecting to have Jon Jones and possibly Brock Lesnar, Jon Jones versus Stipe in the end of the year. Which another fight that could have done 800,000 pay-per-view buys total, maybe more, and now they don't. So tell me I'm wrong that they need this to do 5 million.
I mean, they definitely needed to do big numbers. I don't know if 5 million's the target. I mean, obviously they'd be happy with 5 million.
I think that they're shitting themselves internally right now, that they're not going to be able to make that banknote, and I think that they need that it would be very, very ignorant of a lot of us to think that the UFC will have any sort of a hope to hit the black this year without Conor McGregor and Mayweather doing monster numbers.
Sean, I was going to ask the same thing. How does one shit oneself internally? What does that look like?
Constipation, man.
Let's talk real quickly about perhaps some winners in this whole deal. And I think you can make the case. We already mentioned GSP, but also obviously McGregor if he decides to continue fighting under the Zuffa banner. But I also think Brock Lesnar is a potential winner here too. This is
Is he though?
If he wants to leverage another fight with the UFC, I think his dollar amount just went up.
Sure, but he had the leverage of a Jon Jones fight with the UFC as a way of getting more money out of the WWE.
Sure, but this, I mean,
so that's gone. So that's gone now. So he if he wants a big money fight, big money deal, he's also kind of fucked out of this too because that he can threaten to go to the UFC at this point, but it's like. Is there a UFC fight right now that interests you with Brock Lesnar in it?
Let me check the rankings here.
I will read off heavyweight. Stipe, Overeem, Verdum, Velasquez, Nagano.
Nagano.
Yeah, Nagano. Nagano.
I'm just glad that the vowel sound you used was nah.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's Nagano. Francis Nagano, Mark Hunt, Derek Lewis, Alexander Volkov, Steven Struve, Marcin.
You fuck.
Marcin Tybura. Who the fuck is Marcin Tybura? Alexei Olenek, Andrei Arlovsky, Junior Albini, Travis Brown, Curtis Blades, and Tim Johnson. I'm going to be honest. I'm not interested in any of those fights.
You know, there's one guy that's not on this list that may be the best fight is Josh Barnett.
Right.
It's a fight that Brock could win. He's a guy who could talk the fight up. You know, a Hunt rematch wouldn't be a bad idea. I don't know.
Hunt's not doing that, though.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how much Hunt wants that fight. A Derek Lewis fight would be fun. But other than that, you know, I don't think Lesnar wants any part of Nagano.
How do you pronounce his name? How do you?
Ngannou.
No. There's a letter N, but you don't just say N.
You say Ngannou.
No, it's Nagano.
You did it. You said it.
It's Nagano. It's Nagano. Francis Nagano.
But you know, again, I don't see Lesnar wanting any part of Kane again or Overeem again. You know, I guess you could put him against Verdum.
He's not taking any of those fights, man. Those again, it goes back to fights that interest me if I am a big name. And Jon Jones is a fight that interests me as a big name, and as a big name, I get to pick and choose which ones I'm going to take. Which is also why after seeing the Tyron Woodley Demian Maia fight, GSP said nah.
Sheehan throwing out Brock versus Daniel Cormier.
That's definitely probably their best option. But if you're Daniel Cormier, do you fight Brock Lesnar?
I think Cormier would. I think Cormier beats Lesnar. I think it's biggest. You don't think Cormier can beat Lesnar?
No.
What?
Nope.
What?
No, not at all.
Chat, give me your DC Lesnar predictions, please, and we'll see what side the consensus is. Cormier beats everyone on the planet not named Jones. DC via KO round 1. Yeah, Matt, come on.
No, you guys are crazy.
Cormier minus 210.
Nope. I'm gonna take the. I will make so much money betting on Brock Lesnar.
But no, I think that, I mean,
he beat 3 people on Sunday.
Can we talk about how badass that match was for a second?
That match was awesome, and that man beat 3 people at once. So fuck your odds. You guys don't know shit.
Those boys went out there and really fucking did the thing.
Brock Lesnar beat 3 wrestlers. 3 wrestlers. DC, I understand, is an Olympian, but never actually wrestled in the Olympics. And I'm sorry, Brock Lesnar beat 3 wrestlers at once.
But no, back, seriously, I think for Cormier, I mean, again, he's at the end of his career. Like, is there a bigger fight for him? Money-wise?
I mean, that's it.
So,
what all I'm saying is, like, no, like, everybody's really fucked in this situation. Like, everyone's really fucked in this situation except for Lorenzo Fertitta. He's the only one laughing right now. He's giggling. Like, he's giggling like I'm giggling. Yeah, like, why not do Cormier versus Conor McGregor?
Fuck it, let's do it. Do you think Lorenzo's doing the same drugs that Jon Jones is?
Do you think that Dana White is doing the same drugs as Jon Jones?
Is Dana still doing his stuff? It looks like he's sort of lost a little bit of that definition that he had.
Oh shit! Imagine if William Morris Endeavor is actually drug testing Dana, and that's why he's lost all of his mass, and he's just really angry because he used to do a bunch of cocaine and a whole bunch of steroids and like smoke weed, and now he can't because he's getting drug tested as an executive. Oh man, this scenario in my head, it's hilarious.
All right, two questions for you, Matt.
Yes.
Is Dana White still in the UFC in 5 years?
No.
Is WME still the owners of the UFC in 5 years?
Nope. I think that WME cashes out. I think that they're going to be.
I don't think you can cash out if you're taking a loss.
No. When I say they're going to cash out, is like they're going to take a loss, but I think they're going to try and minimize as much of that loss as they can possibly take. So I think that if they wait longer than 5 years, I think that they're taking like a total bath on this situation. If they sell it within 5, maybe they can make something out of it. But like they were sold something, and somebody, I can't remember who sent it to me on Twitter today. What they basically did is they bought a house by looking at the outside, never actually going inside, never having anybody inspect it, and then and then basically paying 4 times market price for it. That's what they did. They never like I would. There's no way that they looked at the books, and there's no way that they had like an entertainment company didn't foresee cable networks having monetary problems. Like, there's no way. Like, this entire thing is funny to me. Like, they didn't know that ESPN is going to be out of money? Come on. Like,
WME actually reminds me a lot of, like, Beanie Baby collectibles in, like, the late 90s. And they were, like, the last people to kind of get on board it before it crashed. Just because they had no insight. The thing that's always rubbed me with WME is that I don't think they understood the fight game. I think they saw a brand and a product that was doing well and what they thought were sort of stars.
So like the Reebok situation?
Similar, yeah. I mean, I think Reebok's a little different because they got such a sweetheart deal. But the faults that they've shown have been not understanding the combat sport market as well. But I just, you know, I can't think of a successful fight promoter who wasn't a fight promoter. And to sort of come in and think, oh, we're business people, we have these connections. And I think there are things that WME could do if they had sort of more partnered with the UFC rather than bought it.
Right. I think they could have been a great strategic partner. I don't think that
like a minority investment where they're, you know, Zuffa gains access to those connections and their expertise in certain areas, but you know,
I mean, and Mookie brings it up in the chat. Like, there at one point there was hope that maybe Paige Van Zandt and Sage Northcutt were going to be like the Great White Hope, and I mean that in a bunch of different ways. But they that like those guys are basically dead at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they don't exist in the UFC in a capacity where I'm buying cards based on them. The UFC's women's bantamweight division, that took a huge hit this past year. Like, that took a massive hit. Ronda Rousey's still technically ranked in the top 5, but okay, you have Valentina Shevchenko, Holly Holm. I'm really killing it with these names.
Shevchenko.
Yeah, man, I'm killing it. Juliana Pena, Raquel Pennington, Sarah McMahon, Kat Zingano, Jermaine Duranami,
Jermaine Duranaway.
Yeah, Liz Carmouche. I didn't even know that she still fights. I mean, like, is she still fighting? Alexis Davis, Marion Renault, Catelyn Chukagian? Who? Caitlin Vieira, Betch Correa, and
Betch Correa. How long have you been watching MMA?
I haven't watched MMA seriously in like a year. I'm I watch occasionally with like a buddy, but like I don't watch MMA anymore. And also, who the fuck is Caitlin Chukagian?
I've heard her name a couple times.
Like, that division took a huge hit. Like, Miesha Tate, say whatever you want about Miesha Tate, but like, at least you can count on her to be like a co-main event.
All right, I'm going to ask you, we're coming up on the hour. I think we've sort of exhausted our discussion here. I want to ask you one final question before we get out of here, Matt.
All right.
Jon Jones, greatest fighter of all time or not?
No, man, he's a cheater. And I'm not even talking about the PEDs and the cocaine. I'm talking about like the eye pokes. And then also he lost to Matt Hamill, man. Like, can you be the greatest fighter of all time if you lost to Matt Hamill? I don't think so. No, like honestly, I think that he's obviously the best fighter of all time. I think it's just a situation where people need to come to terms with what it means to be a fighter and what you're okay with. And if it means a fighter needs to be clean their entire career and they need to do the right thing all the time, then obviously not. If it means that sometimes treating these fighters like adults that screw up and you look at things as they screwed up, but what they did inside the ring was magical, then obviously he's the best fighter of all time. And like the only other people that have like an argument in that situation are Fedor and Anderson Silva. And it's like, if you look at those guys run through like the prime of their careers, the people they fought and beat isn't comparable to Jon Jones. Like, Jon Jones beat the best of the best at light heavyweight, and Fedor during his like monster run. Granted, it was a monster run. There was a lot of bullshit in there, and Silva during his monster run, yeah, he beat the best, but he also beat Talis Latis and Patrick Cote. And he had a garbage performance against Demian Maia. Like, there's a lot of shit in there too. So I think that Jon Jones, love him or hate him, he's the best fighter of all time. If you're gonna vote for a Hall of Fame, my opinion, you need to let him in. It just really depends on if you're okay with somebody taking steroids or not. Mike, what about you?
I'm okay with steroids. I'm okay with Jon Jones. Probably the greatest fighter I've seen. And yeah,
actually, one other thing we got to talk about. It's real funny that this used to be a 3-man panel. This used to be a 3-man show. One of us actually made a career out of this, and like he learned everything he knows about podcasting from Matt Roth and Mike Fagan. So, Patrick Wyman, we miss you. I know you had stuff you got to do today, but it would have been fun to hear you just go ballistic today.
Are we pouring one out for Patrick? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, I'm pouring one out for somebody who's actually successful. All right, guys. Thank you.
You gonna give us our tagline, Matt?
Oh, what is it? We haven't done this in a while. Is it fuck Jon Jones?
No.
It's not fuck Jon Jones. Is it? I heard about this. I knew about it 3 weeks ago. No, it's not that one. It's fucking no. Also, fuck you, Sean Sheehan. You come visit us on our podcast, and you never invited either of us on yours. So fuck you, Sean Sheehan.
I don't have guests on my podcast. What are you talking about?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
I don't.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Who have I had?
Jeremy Botter. Jeremy Botter.
He's co-hosting.
No, yeah, I get it. You have the ginger who's also Irish because you're a racist. You're a racist. You're a nationalist. You're a nationalist. Get out of here. We're done.
He knew I was inviting him on the podcast 3 weeks before I invited him on.